Hello and welcome to Backyard Birding. We're going to identify, support, and enjoy our avian neighbors. I'm Carly Tuminello. I'm a master naturalist and the director curator of the Jirikasuki Nature Museum at Benedictine University, which is in Lisle. Today we're going to talk about a lot of the native birds that live around our area and how best to support them. Some beginning basics. Birding is a very fun activity. It can be very rewarding, especially as you get to know more and more about the birds in your area. This is a hobby that is available year-round. It can be done either socially in a group or as a solo activity. It definitely can help you increase your awareness of all of the different things that live around our area, throughout the region. The birds that you see seasonally do change as most of our perching birds migrate. So we see some things just passing through in spring and fall, and those can be fun to just catch a glimpse of. It also can help improve math literacy and curiosity, and so it makes it a perfect activity for children to be involved in. And hopefully for all ages, inspires awe and wonder. These are things that can be kind of fleeting in our society nowadays, but are very important to our human experience. So hopefully, being out in nature and noticing these things, getting into intentional curiosity can help us experience these wonderful emotions and feelings. And then a lot of different patterns emerge as you start to watch the birds throughout the year. Seasonality, you notice more as we're going through the year and as the seasons are changing. Those things become more aware and more intentional. So getting started with birding, you really just need a bird guide. There are a lot of different kinds of bird guides out there. If you're looking to start simple and with kind of an abbreviated list of the birds that you would be most likely to see, this Peterson Guide by Feeder Birds of Eastern North America is a great resource. It's a large print, has nice pictures, and really highlights the birds that are most likely to be seen in a backyard bird setting. There's also these laminated field guide sets, Illinois birds or pond life, kind of different arrays of animals that it's highlighting. They are pocket-sized, easy to kind of grab and go or keep with you. And they are laminated, so they are pretty water resistant, which is nice because you never know what the weather's going to do. And then having some sort of bird scope is not necessarily required, but it is helpful. Birds tend to be high up in trees and not kind of eye level or, comfortable being close to us, and that's good because they're wild birds. But some sort of bird scope can help you figure out what the birds are and just be able to zoom in a little bit closer. You can have a monocular or binoculars or even a camera or a phone with a zoom. There are also some apps that are really helpful, especially when getting started birding. The Merlin app actually has a sound feature that can help. It actually records the bird sounds that are around you and can identify which ones they are, or at least give a pretty good guess. And then it has some recorded birds that you can kind of, compare and learn a little bit more about what those birds sound like. eBird and iNaturalist can also help you identify birds, but they act as a citizen science app, so you're collecting data for scientists to use. So that's another great way to kind of keep track of your own sightings. You create your own life lists of what you're seeing, but it's a way to give back to the scientific community as well. Creating habitat and sharing space with birds is so important. Illinois used to be most of it was prairie. We have some wetlands and some woodlands, but I mean the vast majority of our state used to be prairie, and now it's either farmland or urban settings. So trying to give back a little bit of that habitat that was displaced is very welcome to the ecosystem that is still trying to survive. Giving water can be as simple as a flower pot and a saucer, or a flower pot saucer, something like this in the picture, just on a stand. Just make sure to keep it clean, especially during the hot summer days. These things kind of breed bacteria and algae, so you want to make sure that you're cleaning it out regularly and keeping it clean for the birds so that they're not getting sick. Offering some sort of shelter. If you have shrubs, trees, or bushes, this can be a really great way for birds to keep cool, have a place to roost at night, and to stay away from predators. If you don't have these things, please add them as you can. Also, having this tiered shrubs and trees, kind of tiered heights, helps provide more soft landings for birds that might be nesting in those areas. As birds are fledging and starting to learn how to fly, they leave the nest, and falling out of a nest is no fun. So if you have kind of a bush or a shrub that they can hide in and get a safe little shelter in, that can help a lot and help promote those birds as they're kind of in that vulnerable fledgling state. Nesting locations. This can be as easy as an inexpensive birdhouse, but make sure that any birdhouse that you are purchasing, you are looking up the requirements for the bird you're trying to attract. Different birds need different hole opening sizes. And also, please don't buy a birdhouse that has that little peg underneath the hole. The resident birds do not need the peg, they will not use it. But predatory birds that are larger will use that peg to hold on and then take the nest out or eat the eggs and things like that. So we don't want to give predatory birds any leg up, and we want to make it as safe as we can for the resident bird that we're looking to do. So right size, right location. When you're looking up, bird houses, there are certain heights that birds like to be at. Some birds like to have more open areas around their box. Some like to have more vegetation. So all of those things will help you attract the right birds. And remember, not all birds use birdhouses. Robins and mourning doves, they like just kind of a shelf nest. So there are different types of things that can, kind of give shelter and a good nesting location. And really, basically that is shrubs and trees as well, something sturdy for them to build their nest in. And then a food source. Obviously, anytime there are snacks, that's when people come, right? Same thing with birds. And a really great low maintenance way to do this is with native plants, which we'll talk about in a second. But you can also offer a bird feeder, and there are lots of different ways to do that. So bird seeder basics, you want a high quality seed that will help not only attract our native birds, but also give them very good nutrition. So sunflowers are kind of the staple. If you are in kind of like a balcony area or you don't want the mess, having sunflower chips or already hulled sunflowers can help reduce that mess. Things with the seed in hull, they have to take that inside out, so you'll have a lot of kind of mess around from the outside of the seed. But birds have no problem doing that. Peanuts and other, nuts, walnuts, things like that can also be offered. Larger birds like crows and blue jays love peanuts, but please be considerate of any nut or peanut allergies, and that includes of your neighbors. Squirrels and raccoons are also going to visit bird feeders, and squirrels especially tend to be kind of messy and drag some food around to eat it away from the bird feeder, and so that can actually spread allergens around that area, so not just contained in your yard. Cracked corn is a great thing to offer and attracts a different kind of set of birds. Make sure if you are buying any millet or any mixes that have millet, that it is white millet. Our eastern bird species like white millet, they do not eat red millet. So that is sometimes used as a common filler in bird feeders, and that will just produce mess and no one will eat it. So make sure you're kind of checking those quality seeds. And then thistle seed and safflower seeds, those are also really great seeds to offer. And again, kind of attracting a variety of different birds that like these different seeds. If you are offering any sort of food, you don't have to do it regularly. It doesn't have to be something that is always out there, always full. Whenever you offer it, the birds will find it and they will appreciate it. So even if you just do it at like the peak migration to give them a little boost, those birds will love it. A big thing is to make sure it's clean. You want to make sure that the feeder is regularly cleaned out, that there's no wet or moldy food after a big rainstorm. If there's a lot of bird seed that's kind of stuck in the feeder, make sure that you're checking that and cleaning that out so that the birds aren't getting sick. And after any like hot temperature, any strings of hot temperatures, you want to make sure that nothing is spoiled. With any sort of bird food, you want to make sure that there's no artificial sweeteners. Hopefully you know by now that like peanut butter that has xylitol in it is toxic to dogs. Same thought process for birds. We don't want to have any sort of artificial colors or sweeteners because those can have toxic properties for the birds. And many, many different people offer bird feeding in their backyard. According to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, over 57 million people offer some sort of little habitat corner of food offering for the birds, which is great. Another easy way to give back to birds is to garden. We know that birds like seeds and nuts and berries. Some eat fruits and nectar. Robins are known for eating worms, but really all birds need insects and spiders. So insects and spiders are mostly found in your garden, and that's a good thing. They're supposed to be there. They're part of our ecosystem. And so supporting insects is a great way to support birds. You can't have birds without insects. So plant native trees, that's a great way to do it. The white oak is known for being a host plant for over 500 different insects. Planting native gardens and kind of looking up if you're looking to attract certain things. Host plants are a great way to do that. Kind of the best example of a host plant is milkweed for monarchs, right? The caterpillars have to have that specific plant to grow up on. And so selecting plants that are hosts for different species is a really good way to support those different species and give them something that they can thrive on. And then not using any pesticides or insecticides or herbicides that would then cull those different insect populations. We want to promote those guys. And this can also, you can support birds by educating your neighbors, adding signage to your garden that you are not going to spray pesticides, adding signs that you are native gardening. That helps promote awareness and just educating and talking to your neighbors, friends, and family about these importances is great. That is how you support the birds. And then I encourage you to document your observations. This can be through your own personal nature journal. This can be through an online blog, or it can be through community science, like the eBird and iNaturalist. Those are great ways to give back the information of what you're seeing, kind of boots on the ground observations that scientists really they use, and it's vital information for them because you are their eyes and ears then. So gardening for the birds, this is a very abbreviated list, but a good list. So if you're kind of new to gardening for birds or kind of just starting out, these can be a great kind of powerhouse plants. And if you were looking for like nectar sources or sources for insects, this top list can be very helpful. Golden Alexander, for example, is a really great early spring flowering plant, whereas asters are usually a later fall into a very early winter plant. So looking at the different bloom times and getting this cascade of flowers throughout the whole growing season is really the best way to support pollinators and therefore to support birds. And then if you're looking for seeds and berries, which obviously are great food sources for many different birds, there are a list of different ones here. Like I mentioned, white oak has, just this great support for so many, hundreds of different insects. And all of those, usually in the larval stage, are a very important food source for birds. For example, one clutch of chickadees. So chickadees lay between 3 and 5 eggs. Just to raise those 3 to 5 young chickadees until they can fledge will take between 6,000 and 8,000 caterpillars. So they need soft-bodied, high-protein insects, usually in that caterpillar stage. And that's where the white oak can be such a great resource for those parent birds trying to, fly around and get all of those resources for their young. So those are some examples of these beautiful, and native plants are really gorgeous. They're not weeds, they're beautiful, they are very adapted to our climate, which means that they're usually drought tolerant, disease resistant, pest resistant. So it's very low maintenance way to have these supports in place, not just for birds, but for the whole ecosystem. Here is some examples from Doug Tolomei's work. I'm sure you've heard of him. If you haven't, look up his plethora of books on these topics. But these are just some key facts about how planting natives, especially native trees, helps give back to our ecosystem and really act as keystone plants that, without them, there aren't as many of these, really important pollinators and insects available because they don't have the resources that they need to thrive. And so we're looking at the whole food chain, a whole food web here. And you really need native plantings to support our native habitats. So oak, like I said, it's a great tree. Willows and cherries, like black cherry trees, are also really great. These are kind of arranged by like how many total species they are a host plant to. And then again with the soft landings, you can see here with the moths, a lot of different insects benefit from having leaf litter either to hide in. So if there's caterpillars up in the tree, they're eating the leaves, they're going to use those leaves. Most species use those leaves to create their cocoon or chrysalis in, and then they fall down to the ground. And if they don't use the leaf to overwinter in, then they go, just under the soil, but they use that leaf to get there. And so if we're getting rid of all of those leaves, we're inadvertently getting rid of many native insects. So, we want to find a good way to support those as well so that they can support the birds. And this is a lot of what our suburban environments look like. Not a lot of flowers in these photos. We have our yards very much separated from each other, and we have a lot of turf grass. So you can see that our habitats have a lot of concrete. They have a lot of turf grass, which does not support our native insects or pollinators or birds. Turfgrass is not native. It's actually a European species and is considered invasive by some. It just doesn't support a wide variety of any sort of species. And so even adding a few native plants to any of these settings would help so that you can see, if you see this overview of this neighborhood, and you are a small bird or a small butterfly trying to find food resources, you're going to be using a lot of energy flying between all of those different food resources. So the more that we can add to every single backyard, the less energy output they have to have, and the healthier they can be because they have more high quality food resources available. And you can see in the top right corner with this rooftop garden, Rooftop gardens are getting much more popular in places like Chicago and other major cities, and they really are a wonderful way to give back to our native species. They become these wonderful little oases in all of the crazy urban environment, and just gives back some of that habitat in spaces that really, aren't useful to us. We can give those spaces back to be a little wild, which is great. And so this is what we want in our backyards. Lots of variety, lots of color. And this is what lives there. In the upper right, that little spiky black and orange little critter, that is a ladybug larvae. They don't look anything like a ladybug when they're tiny. So a lot of things, you might not recognize in these different stages of their life cycle. The caterpillar on the right there is not going to look anything like that when it becomes a moth. So getting to know what's in your backyard and all of these different little insects living their little insect lives, that can help you with your own awareness of what is there, and then what is there to support the rest of that food web, because this is really, the basis. We need the plants, we need the insects, and then it cascades upwards. So how do we identify the birds that we are working so hard to promote and to support? Field marks are kind of the standard of how you identify birds, and they can give you a lot of different clues. So here we have this blue bird, right? Well, this is not a bluebird. In the upper right corner, that is a bluebird. This bird that has all the field marks denoted is an indigo bunting. So just saying, oh, I see a blue bird in my backyard, could mean a lot of different things. The bluebird on the top right are very common, but they have kind of that red breast and kind of a whitish colored belly. We also have a blue jay just below that. They're another bluebird, right? But they have that crest, those very stylized markings on the wings, and a white belly. And then there's a large bluebird, which is our great blue heron. And those are usually not found in your backyard, but more towards water resources. And then down here on the bottom, this is a common grackle. And in certain lighting, grackles can kind of have this blue iridescent shine to them. But normally, if it didn't have sunlight on it, it would look like a black bird. So in different lights, in different settings, you could have all these different things that would kind of just not help you identify exactly what the bird is unless you're keying in on all of these different characteristics. So the size and shape of the bird gives a lot to kind of the type of bird that it is. The bill type will tell you a lot about what it eats, but also kind of the category of bird is, and really helps when you're looking at the size and the shape and the color of that beak or bill, that can really help a lot with identifying the bird. The overall color and markings, but sometimes you're just going to get the silhouette of the bird and not really get to see a lot of those color and markings. So that's where all of these kind of feed in together to give you the information that you need. The location of the bird can give you a lot of information, right? The heron is going to be, more towards water settings, where the blue jay is probably going to be more towards, your backyard setting. And then the bird's song. So actually learning to bird by sound is a great way to get to know birds, because a lot of times you're going to hear them and not necessarily see them because they're way up high in the trees. They tend to live their life high above us. So being able to key in on their unique bird songs is a great way to learn how to bird and to know more about birds. Birds also have several different calls. They have alert calls. Some species have alerts to things up above, like hawks and things like that, and alert calls to, look down to the ground, like for cats and things like that. So getting to know all of those different things can also help you be more aware of your surroundings while you're outside, just keying in on their perceptions and what they're doing. So one of our iconic birds is the American robin. They have that orangey red breast. They tend to have a darker colored head, which, this time of year is kind of more of this dark gray or even kind of a black color. They tend to have kind of a white eye mark or an eye ring and a bright yellow bill. But from the back, like you can see in the second picture, they can kind of look like a catbird, except for that yellow bill. So looking at all of these different field marks together can tell you a lot about it. We do have their pictures of their nests here. They have those very iconic robin's egg blue eggshells. And then here on the bottom is a little fledgling. They kind of are mottled. They have some speckles and spots when they're first starting to get their feathers that helps them blend in to bushes and things like that as they're starting to learn to fly. So we can see that these kind of look a bit like a catbird, like I mentioned, from the back at least, right? So catbirds, if you hear a cat in a tree and you don't see a cat, it's probably one of these guys. They tend not to be super loud, but they do have a very distinctive cat-like song. They also have kind of a darker gray or black cap on their head, but they have a black bill and they have just gray all the rest of their body. They do have a lot of character and spunk to them. They're a fun bird to watch in your backyard, kind of coming and going. They tend to be kind of solitary, but they're a very fun bird and very common to backyard settings. Baltimore Orioles are such a striking specimen. There's this bright ruddy orange breast on the males. And then you can see on both the male and the females, they have these distinctive wing bars. The male is a little more prominent with the black and white and black, but the females kind of mirror that as well. You can see the female is a bit more muted. She still has a bright yellow color, but her head is a little more kind of beige gray, and that kind of helps her blend in a bit more. He is much more bold and has a beautiful, very loud, sing-songy, melodious call. These guys readily will come up and utilize a jelly feeder. Again, make sure that there's no artificial sweeteners or flavors in it. And they also love oranges. So that's a great way to attract them to your backyard. Just cut an orange in half and either stick it on a twig or in a feeder like this. And they will actually eat the pulp out of the center. And they'll eat any insects that may be around also eating that orange or the jelly. They also are weaver birds, and so they make this very unique nest, which in early spring can kind of be easier to see as they're making it, but they usually kind of get really covered up by the foliage once the leaves of the tree leaf out fully. So they can be hard to spot, but they're really a beautiful hanging basket of a nest, which is really cool to watch them make if you're lucky enough to have these in your area. Ruby-throated hummingbirds, oh, these are such a joy to have in your yard. They do readily use bird feeders specifically made for nectar. They do not need the nectar to be red. You do not need the artificial colors, and they can, kind of build up and be hard for the birds to digest. So opt for the clear nectar and just make sure that the feeder is red, and that will help attract them. So you can see here in the top, the actual feeder part is red and the liquid in it is clear. So that is a good way to help support our native hummingbird. But be sure that you are keeping that feeder very clean, especially if we get 80 degrees for a few days in a row. That needs to be changed out daily. Being sugar water, if it is in heat and sun, it will breed mold and bacteria very quickly. And the mold that it will grow can actually make the tongue of the hummingbirds swell. And as you can imagine, they don't have a lot of room for that to happen. So it will actually suffocate them. And so they can die of mold toxicity. So we don't want to be doing that. If you are skittish about making sure that your feeder is clean, like I am. There are many different native plants that you can use instead, which are maintenance free, and the birds love them. Usually red or orange tubular flowers are their favorites, and there is just so many different options for you to grow in your garden. So I highly recommend native plants. You can see here the nest. Oh my gosh, it's so tiny. Their eggs are about the size of jelly beans, and they actually make their nests out of spider webs and lichen. So it's stretchy. It'll grow with the babies as they get older, and it's very tough. It just sticks right to the branch that they have chosen. But these are very tiny, very tiny, hard to spot, but really a treat if you can find them in the trees. The white-breasted nuthatch. These are spunky little birds. They tend to like to climb up and down the bark of trees, usually head first and coming down the tree. I also call them our zero-G bird because, like you can see in the second picture, they'll go upside down underneath branches, no problem being any direction at all. They do like seeds. They will readily come to your backyard feeder, and they tend to like sunflower seeds, and they'll usually take one seed away from the feeder and peck at it to open it up and eat the inside, and then kind of come back and forth like that. They also have a very interesting kind of nasally chirp to them. So they have a very distinctive call, which is easy to kind of get to know as well. The tufted titmouse is another small bird. Lots of spunk, lots of character. Tend to be kind of just a quiet bird. They have a little crest, which they could have up or down. And they just kind of flit up to your feeder. They'll readily come up to bird feeders, but they'll also just be in and around trees and bushes looking for insects. You can see, especially on the one on the left, that they kind of have a little bit of an orange blush underneath their wing. And so when they're flying, that's a little bit easier to see. But these are a small bird about the size of like a chickadee. So they're very cute. Goldfinch, this is another small bird with a big personality. The males are just this sunny yellow color. They also have these wing bars. So you can see the white wing bar on their black wings. The females do mirror that as well, but she is not as brightly colored and does not have that black cap on the forehead. And they do have a bright orange little beak, kind of a triangle shaped finch beak. They like to eat seeds. They like to eat, pretty small seeds. So they'll, like you can see on the top here, coneflowers. They'll come and pick off the insects and then wait for that coneflower to go to seed and pick at the seeds. They'll also pick through, different flowers, different berries, but they're very cute. They also have a very distinctive flight pattern. They usually pump their wings and then stop, and so they actually lose a little bit of altitude. So there's kind of a pulsation to the way they fly, and that can be a good way to, identify them even when they're way up in the sky and you can't really see all these other field marks. And they have a beautiful call, very sing-songy, very melodious bird call. The house finch, again, very nice bird call. These look, kind of like a sparrow, right? Especially the females can be mistaken with other kinds of finches and sparrows. The male has this kind of blush color to the head, throat, and front of the breast and belly, and then just a little bit of color on the rump, just above the tail. They do have a beautiful, beautiful call and readily come to backyard bird feeders. They're very, very common across Illinois. And so these are also a joy. They do have this kind of interesting kind of gray tan colored beak, which is another good field mark to tell what they are. Oh, and I want to note on the right side, this type of feeder that this finch is at is actually a type of feeder that I would say not to use. So when you have a bird feeder where the bird is sticking their head through something or just in kind of a narrow opening, like this one, they can actually kind of rub their face against the sides, right, as they're putting their face in. And that can spread conjunctivitis, which is a very common eye infection. And unfortunately, if your main mode of transportation is flying, you can't do that with poor eyesight. So it can be fatal to birds just because they can't fly and they can't forage for food. So to dissuade that, not only are we keeping our bird feeders clean, but we're also choosing bird feeders that don't help promote that kind of contact where their eyes would kind of be sharing that same space and helping to spread that pathogen. Black-capped chickadee, if you put out bird seed, you know that these guys are like the first one to get to the bird feeder. They're very bold. They tend to be kind of quick. They'll come and grab a seed and then go into a tree or somewhere that they feel safe to eat it. They're just a cute little fluff ball. They have this very distinctive black cap and throat. And then from kind of their nostrils back to their neck, a big patch of white on the side. And they have this little teeny tiny bill, little black bill that helps get into little seeds. They like to eat berries, and they usually nest in cavities of trees. So places that woodpeckers may have excavated before, they'll readily kind of use those as a nesting place. And they also do, readily come to your backyard. They will use whatever plant resources you have there, or if you have like suet feeders and things like that, they'll kind of choose which seeds they want to pick out of those as well. Very cute little birds. The house wren, oh boy, are these loud for as small as they are. These guys have a lot of character. You can see that little tail they like to hold straight up. They can have a little attitude. These are very small birds, but they are loud. And usually if you hear birds calling at like 4 or 5 in the morning, it is either a robin or a house wren. They start their day early and they want everybody to know about it. They readily will use nest boxes. And these are, very common, widely available. You can see one here on the right. They need a very small hole opening because they are a small bird, and that helps prevent things like house sparrows or other predatory birds from attacking the nest. Again, they don't need the peg, like you can see here. She's got one leg kind of on the edge of the opening, and then the other one just braced on the side of the nest box. So they don't need any little peg to help them in and out of their nest box. Just make sure that you're cleaning out the nest box at the end of the season. That will help to prevent any pathogens kind of spreading year to year. But very cute little birds and, a nice little backyard visitor. Song sparrows, we have a lot of different native sparrows, but I wanted to highlight this one because they do have a very distinctive song that is very pretty, very melodious, which you can see is even in their scientific name. So it's an easier song to kind of learn if you're trying to learn more about sparrows. They do kind of blend right in to the other sparrows that might be in and around your backyard. But they do stand out when you take a second to really look at them because they have that kind of mottled chest and belly. They do have those stripes by their eyes and on their crown. So they do stand out when you really start to look at those field marks. They are a beautiful little bird. The one down here on the right, you can see when they start singing, it's like their whole body gets into it. They're just an adorable little bird, and will readily come to your bird feeder and take advantage of whatever seeds you put out. They're not picky. Mourning doves, these are very well known. They're very common birds, kind of a larger bird. They have a distinctive kind of blue skin that is around their eye, which is just so pretty. And they have these spots on the back of their wings and just below their eye. So those are some good field marks to kind of keep an eye on. When they're flying, like in the upper right here, they have a diamond-shaped tail, and they kind of flutter when they fly. They're not like a very quick flyer. They readily come to the backyard, especially if you offer cracked corn, but they like to feed on the ground. So they will not really go up to a hanging feeder. But if you get a ground feeder, which usually is kind of a mesh to let the water go through, but it's just held up off the ground so that the seeds don't spoil, they will readily come to that. They also, enjoy backyard water features like water fountains or bird baths. And they tend to not make much of a nest, but they are very well known for nesting in hanging plants, especially like ferns, something that they feel safe in, and they'll just kind of add a few sticks to it and make their nest there. They have a very distinctive cooing sound, and they tend to call early morning and at dusk. So that's kind of tends to be when you see them the most. But a beautiful native bird, and just very enchanting little guys. The American crow, they have a lot of attitude too. They are a big bird. They kind of when they come in, all the other birds kind of give them some space. They are very intelligent. Curiosity is definitely their biggest challenge, but if they can get through their first year, they can have a very long life. But unfortunately, they do have a high mortality that first year out just because they are so curious. And we do have so many different hazards in our urban environments. But if they can figure out how to not get hit by cars and fly into windows and things like that, they get some street smarts. They can fare very well in our urban environment for many years. You can see they make kind of a stick nest, and being a bigger bird, it's a bigger nest. So keep an eye out for something like that. And they're just fun. They're quite a character, and they like larger seeds. Like if you offer peanuts or things like that, even some kitchen scraps, they will readily use that as well. Blue jays, kind of the same little attitude, even though they're smaller than crows. When they are at the feeder, it is their time, and the other birds give them space too. They have this, uh, distinctive blue crest that they can put back down against their head, but usually is kind of upright, like you can see here on the bottom right. They also tend to like larger seeds and nuts, but they like sunflower seeds as well. They nest again with kind of a stick nest, but it's a lot smaller than a crow's. Very distinctive blue colors. They have that white wing bar on the side, and then those very long striped tail feathers as well. A very fun bird. They look a lot like a northern cardinal, except we're changing up colors. So northern cardinals have that distinctive orange beak. They have a little bit of a face marking, right? The females not so much, but the males have kind of this distinctive black face feature on the throat and right around the eyes. And then that red crown, the red crest that both of them have. The female has a little bit more subdued colors, but she still has the red in her crest and her tail feathers, and then in the back of her wing feathers. So the male is much more distinctive with that ruby red color. They kind of make nests out of long twigs and like you can see here on the upper right, kind of woven into the bush branches and things like that. But very distinctive. They have a very unique song, a very unique call. And actually that was used as inspiration for a lot of like the 1980s, 1990s video games, like Atari games. So kind of an interesting little side fact about their very unique call. Mallard ducks, sometimes you can see these in your yard, depending on if you are near a water source or if you have puddles. Puddles tend to be a very good food source for ducks in early and late spring. These kind of little ephemeral ponds, they welcome a lot of like frogs and toads and even dragonfly species because there are no fish. But that doesn't mean there's no predators because ducks really like to eat all of those different macroinvertebrates and tadpoles. So if you have kind of a lower depression that fills up regularly with water, you'll definitely have some ducks checking that out. Also, if you offer cracked corn, especially on ground feeders, they'll also come check that out too. And you can see here on the bottom right, the little duckling. They have that distinctive little yellow head and kind of a brownish color to help them blend in a bit. They might nest up away from the water, but as soon as the chicks hatch, they need to get down to the water because that's where they are going to grow up. So they need that water source for food and for water. So they don't stay at their nest very long. That's really just to hold the eggs. Some non-native species to highlight. Yeah, the house finch. We just talked about him. But actually, house finch are Western species. They are not a native Eastern species. But in the late 1800s, there was a pet store in the Northeast that was selling them, and they got in trouble for selling this bird that was not native to the Eastern area. And they actually just let them go. And then there were birds that were, in the area, and they were in the Eastern area now. And that was apparently their solution to it. So they have naturalized to our area. They are very common. But yeah, they're actually not originally from around here. European starlings, they are very distinctive. They have that bright yellow bill, the kind of mottled copper colors that they have with their iridescent blue and green and purple feathers. I mean, they're a very striking bird. They really get their name because they kind of look like a constellation, and they're known for their big murmurations and how they fly. They were actually released on purpose in the late 1800s in Central Park as part of a Shakespeare production, and just thrived in our urban environments and have since spread all across the United States and are very much at home here, but they are not native. Rock pigeon as well. These are like the pigeons that you know all around Chicago. They are kind of a large bird. They can sometimes be kind of confused with a mourning dove, but rock pigeons are not native. They're not from here. They're a Eurasian species. House sparrows, very common in every backyard, very much adapted to urban environments, but again, a European species. Um, they can take up a lot of valuable space from native species, and sometimes they will raid nest boxes and things like that. So they can be kind of aggressive at times. Monk parakeets are actually an escaped pet, but they're pretty well established in certain areas, including around Chicago. The problem is they are a pretty big bird. And they make colony nests. So they make very large nests, like you can kind of see here on the right side. And they tend to do that in power lines, and those can catch fire. So a lot of times power companies will kind of you have to mitigate and remove those nests so that they don't cause any issues like fires or disconnecting wires, which would be bad for both the birds and everyone who's trying to use that power. And then mute swans are actually non-native. They were brought here from Europe to be, a beautiful kind of centerpiece on a pond. But after many escapes, they have now really established themselves throughout North America. You can tell them from our native trumpeter swan because mute swans have this very distinctive orange bill when they get to be adults. You can see here the goslings have a black bill, but as they get older, they get that very distinctive orange bill. And they can be kind of aggressive. They chase away Canada geese and things like that. It can, especially when they're nesting, they are a large bird. So you definitely want to give them their space. They are very territorial. We are very fortunate to have several different woodpeckers in our area. Up here on the left, we have red-bellied woodpecker. It's got a distinctive red head, but it does have some red on its belly and underside, which is definitely not an outstanding field mark. But you can see the red-headed woodpecker over on the right and just how red that one is, why it got its name. We also have the downy woodpecker and the hairy woodpecker, which look very similar to one another, especially when they're not right next to each other. But the downy woodpecker is much smaller and has a small beak. And the hairy woodpecker is a bit bigger and it actually has a very long, like a much longer beak than the downy woodpecker. But those can be very difficult, especially for beginning birders to tell the difference. The yellow-bellied sapsucker, you can see it has kind of an interesting mottled colors and then a red cap and a red throat. They are usually high up in trees, but a fun little bird to watch go up and down and look for different bugs and things like that. The pileated woodpecker is our largest woodpecker, but they don't really like human sound pollution, so they tend to kind of be tucked away in our forest preserves and areas that are a little bit more quiet and away from traffic. The Morton Arboretum on the east side regularly has them kind of back in the woods, so they are definitely around here, but a little bit harder to see. They don't really come to most backyards. And then down on the bottom, the northern flicker. These tend to actually be found kind of on the ground because they love to eat ants. So they will, one of the birds that really will use some turf grass areas to seek out those ant resources. But a very striking bird can also be seen a lot up in the trees as well. And this time of year is wonderful for some spring migration highlights. Warblers, and this is just a small little section of warblers to highlight. These are wonderful little birds, very tiny birds usually, and they're very quick, and they're just passing through. They're on their way farther north up into Canada to have their nesting seasons. But they are on the way through now, and they're just so striking and so fun. Again, keying into that seasonality and curiosity, getting to know these is just a fun kind of insight into birding. So this is a great season to kind of get out there and see what it is that you can find because these guys are so fleeting. So we are in a really great position for birding. We're along one of these flyways, which is really like an avian superhighway. And these are pathways that a lot of birds take as they migrate. Now, spring migration is much more abrupt and overt than any fall migrations. And that's because they're all kind of racing north to find the best nesting areas and to start their nests for the year. Millions of birds will travel together, and usually they are migrating at night. You're avoiding a lot of the temperature changes and the thermals. Daytime predators are obviously not there during the night. There are also lower temperatures with the sun down, and there is some hypotheses that they navigate by moon and stars. So they tend to kind of rest and come down into our areas, our trees to eat during the day, and then they are off and running, flying up on these kind of pathways up north. The fall migration is much more slower paced. They don't all do it at one time. It is, again, usually overnight, but it's greatly impacted by our fall weather events. And sometimes males and females will migrate at different times. So it's just kind of not as abrupt as the spring migration is. So it's harder to kind of catch a lot of those birds during the fall migration, which is why there's so much excitement for spring. If you're looking for kind of timing of when to go out and about to look for birds, I definitely suggest looking at Birdcast. They do a lot of forecasting during the spring migration, and a lot of this is because you can see these massive bird flocks on radar, and so you can kind of track them and see where they're going as they're taking off and landing. But these give a really great insight into kind of the area where you have the most bird migration at any given time. And so that next morning would be a great time to go out and go birding and see what's there. So as we get into mid to late May, we're starting to kind of get to our peak and kind of past our peak area. for migrations, but there's still a lot to see out there. So I definitely recommend getting out and seeing what birds are in and around your region. I am out here from the Jirikasuki Nature Museum, which is at Benedictine University. We offer a wide variety of outreach and also welcome the public to visit our museum. We are open for the summer, we're open year round, and we offer about 3,500 things to see in the museum. We also are the host site for the EEAI Regional Nature Journal Club. So if you're interested in that, we meet monthly and go over a wide variety of topics and get to see some museum specimens as well as explore our nature trail here on campus, as well as our newly formed campus arboretum. So thank you so much for your time and get out there and have a great time birding.